So we had been looking at the property for a few weeks, and we had talked with a number of different people in working out the vision for St. Anne's, working out at least the vision of us getting there and finding out what God had to do there. And we had brought a lot of mentors and such into the conversation. And over time we started to bring in different kinds of voices. We got the opportunity to take our context class and see the property and talk to us about it, ask us questions, probe a little bit. And a number of us had, on different opportunities, had chances to take smaller groups or individuals that we knew who would probably come alongside us and partner with us in different ways and show them. But Kent suggested that we bring the current MRNA cohort and that we just go and sit in the backyard, our courtyard out there, and we tell them our story, and then we sit and we listen for their wisdom. So we drive up, I think I was among the first there, and I watch as they sort of come in this parade, pulling in one after the other, and we all get out our chairs, circle up right next to the single blooming tree in the middle of this courtyard. We joke around a bit, and we talk. I get to meet a few of the members of the cohort that I actually didn't know up till that point. Apparently there was some crossover. There were a number of us who hadn't interacted with them as much. So we got to know them a bit, and then we sat. Kent just said, "Tell your story." And you narrated a good bit of our story, and we all kind of dropped pieces in to fill in gaps, and they listened and they listened, and then we all just kind of sat in silence for a bit. Everybody got the opportunity to look around the property, to look for sort of those symbols of the age, those signs on the property that tell what its history is, what its natural history is. Not just that it was a hospital, but what it's been through since. And we all came back and sat together and we started to listen. It was because the voices were very different. They were all very good. We had the grace of, along with the cohort, having Blake Smith, Kent's son, there, and he's a favorite of ours at the moment because he's walked along with us in a lot of this, and he shared some wisdom with us about what it is to try and fail and try again, and that putting these attempts out into the world, simple manifestations of what you're looking to do. It's interesting how he was able to help us through that kind of advice, be okay with some of our mess-ups up till that point, how he was able to tie our occasional foolishness to the genius of Da Vinci and Michelangelo, in seeing that their screw-ups led to greatness too. Bits of wisdom like that. There were also just really hard questions. We were asked questions like, how are you actually going to connect with the community? Do you think you're doing that now, or do you think you need to be doing that now more, or do you think this is a time to focus more on the inner workings of your group? And do you think there could be some problems here that you're really not paying attention to? And at the same time, there were voices that said, "You're doing good. You're trying. Don't even know if you're doing it right or doing it wrong. Don't know if there is a right or wrong, but we see your faith in trying." And there's a lot of confidence in that, because that was one of the times when we were probably more afraid than normal about where we were as a community in moving into this context. So we all continued to talk for a while, for a couple of hours actually, and the sun went down, and we realized the day was coming to a firm close, So Kent, in his great wisdom, suggested that we part ways for then. So we start to, and I unlocked my keys in my truck, because I am wise. So I didn't have my twisted hanger that I always have in the back of my truck, because I always lock my keys in my truck and I can pop it pretty quick, but I didn't have my hanger wire. So I called my roommate, asked him to bring me a hanger. And 4 of the rest of our cohort stuck around with me and just talked with me while we were, there were only 4 others there at the time, so the rest of our smaller cohort stuck around with me and talked with me while we waited on my roommate to come. And during the conversation, I had been realizing that I felt very different in this context than I felt like other people did. And they all probed a bit why. And I realized, it kind of came to me even as I said it, I looked around and it looked like where I grew up, because I grew up about 5-6 blocks away. College Heights neighborhood is the neighborhood right next to mine, from when I was in elementary through the first part of high school, I guess. And it was weird because for me it was kind of this homecoming, and so much of what we had talked about that night was, you are in a sense foreigners moving into this very foreign context, and you might not realize that. And it frustrated me inwardly to think about that, because I thought, maybe I am. Maybe I've been gone long enough that I am a foreigner now. Maybe I'm a foreigner in the group of foreigners that's moving in. I just didn't know at the time. And we talked a bit and realized one of the things that conversations like that conversation that night helped us to do was not just listen for the wisdom of God and the overarching story of our time in St. Anne's, but listen for God in the lives of individuals, and how important it is for us to attend to that as we move forward. So my story is very much one of the inner workings of our smaller community in this context, but I think that's going to play in to how we're able to establish our spiritual rhythms together, how we're able to work out crisis situations and conflicts. Honestly, how we're going to be able to interact with the community at large by knowing the sense of our community identity and our individual identities in light of that. So that night for me was illuminating, and in some sense very comforting. Gave me a sense of we can listen for God in one another, and we're aware that we need to now.